What about just for you? When's the last time something really changed your mind, where you can say, I thought I held this opinion for a long time, but there was some new information came along, and now I'm rethinking it?
That's a really good question. I would probably need a moment to think about when it would really. Well, okay, many years ago when I thought that Iraq really was a substantial threat, because I believed my president and said, okay, weapons of mass destruction, well, who likes those? And then you find out the whole thing was not true. And so I stupidly believed. And so when the real information came out due to Hans Blick's weapons inspectors being turned away, you find out there was no weapons at all, just like Saddam Hussein said. That turned me around on a lot of things. And Bush was not a guy I voted for, but I disagree with him on different things rather than, wow, this dude lied to me. And so that did a number on me. I was not like a happy Republican or something. I was a guy who took my president seriously because he's my president. I don't care what side of the aisle he's on. But once he's my president, I'm going to listen to all the speeches and pay attention. And when he did that to me, it is maybe when people older than me had their Nixon moment after Watergate and went, oh, okay, you know.
So you were full on board up to a point till you found out there's no weapons of mass destruction?
Not necessarily. In that, I don't want a war or people getting blown up. But I was like, oh, well, Saddam Hussein is obviously in violation of this, this, and this. He should have, if he wanted to save his hide, he should have fessed up. And when you find out, as miserable as this guy was, he was telling the truth. Basically, he was bluffing to make sure Iran wouldn't come over the border and give him the what for what he did to their people years ago. And so that really changed me. But I thought for a moment ethanol was a real answer. When I saw people in Brazil utilizing sugarcane and getting off petroleum, I said, well, that's a way out. And I'm a college kid after the show went, word to the wise. It was in Baltimore. He said, ethanol is just not going to work, and it's a subsidy thing for the corn people and the grain people. It's kind of a scam. You should before you get caught out there. And this guy's like a fraction of my age. But hey, I'm open.
Right.
So I said, okay, thank you for that, because I'm just hopeful. That's all I was. It's anything to get us off gasoline or petroleum.
Sure.
And so I did some research on that, and he was right. He was right. And then like on the cover of Time magazine, ethanol is just it's not going to work, at least not in America. So. That was a thing that turned me around. Is I wasn't getting the good information.
And I think it's always great when people have those kind of loose knees, too, where when you're not buying into one single philosophy.
True.
You know what I mean? Where it's not just, obviously there's things in communism that work or else that wouldn't be doing them, but you certainly don't want the full thing, and the same can be said for any kind of philosophy.
I think as far as this country, most Americans or many Americans are in the middle of things. They go for what smacks as common sense. Would you rather be homeless or would you rather have a roof over your head? Well, that's a pretty easy decision. Both sides of the aisle can capture that and say, well, if you do it our way, that's what you get. If you do it their way, well. And so everyone capitalizes on that. That's politics. So one must be very, very careful, read a lot, and ask a lot of questions. But I think by and large, people want that proverbial day without fear and a fistful of 50s.
Sure. You go out and meet people from all over the world. When you do your travels, you're not just necessarily going to the capital. Do you set out on this tour, I want to see this, this, and this, or do you just let yourself just
be on
the road?
Yeah. This is the last trip I was on before this tour started. I was in Senegal and Mali, Nepal, China, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, Brunei, Indonesia, on the island of Java. I couldn't get to Sumatra. And I was in Saudi Arabia. And usually I do what I've been doing all over the world for years. I just grab my camera, a bottle of water, and I just hit the streets. And I leave the hotel on foot. Sometimes I'll get in a cab and I'll say, give me like $5 that way. The guy goes, what does that mean? I go, just drop me off that way and I'll find my way back. And that will be what I'll do today. And I end up walking through slums, down railroad tracks, down rivers, into villages, into souks and bazaars. And I'm still here. The only time I've ever had to run for my life, literally, was in America. Right. And that happened. But otherwise, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not brave. I'm not looking to fight anybody. I'm just curious. And I've done this in Lebanon and Syria and Pakistan and you name it. Seoul, South Korea, wherever. I just go and I find the information as I find it.
And whatever happens to come up in that day, you meet somebody, you might spend the day, but you don't go out with other people, you don't have a translator with you,
Every once in a while, I'll hire a tour guide. Like when I was in Laos a couple of summers ago, I hired a driver and a tour guide because I wanted to get to a place called Ziang Kuang, which is in the middle of nowhere, to see a thing called the Plain of Jars. And it's just a historical site, and I wanted to go, and you can't really fly in, and I'm not going to trust myself with a vehicle through the mountains of Laos, although that would be an adventure. I thought I'd let the driving be done by someone else. So I hired I went to a company, I said, I need a guy, and I want to go there. They said, we got it. Here's the money, make it happen. And so I did that in Southeast Asia, where I'd be like in Saigon, and I hired a guy. I said, take me around, show me the museums, take me to Cu Chi so I can crawl through the tunnels of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, teach me a thing or two, instruct. And the guy did. He's a tour guide. I took notes, I took photos, he talked all day. I've done that. I did that in Israel years ago. I drove all over the country with a guy that's what he does. He's a tour guide, and he knows everything. It's a great way to go. It's a different way. I like to do that. And then I also like to wander around and dig the people and see it my own way.
Do you find some people are way different than us, or is there's always that humanity? But do you ever bump into people where you go, I have no idea where they even started?
You'll always find that obvious human chord in that shelter, food, warmth, lack of fear is desired. But when you're in Saudi Arabia, Sharia law is, to me, logic stood on its head. There's nothing good about it for me. It's not for me to judge some country and how they conduct themselves, but Sharia I think it sucks. Yeah. And so what people thought was the right thing to do. Are you kidding me? Yeah. A woman gets raped and it's her fault? No. So there's moments where you just can't figure it out. Yeah. Some extreme ways of living that not are necessarily due to the lay of the land. Like when you go to a place like Afghanistan, you see the way people live. It's because there's no food for a while. So people, they learn to walk, they learn to climb, they've learned to make it happen. Some places you see people who live in a state of poverty that is preventable, and it makes you mad. Like Burma, I hiked through Burma for a couple of weeks years ago, and you see what Tan Shui, the senior general of the country, what he does to his people. The interior of that country is so screwed. Nice people, no medical, no hospitals. No, you break a leg, you got real problems. Like you might lose the leg, and then you might lose your life due to the infection. And so when you see things like that, you go, well, this is madness. You can have it differently. What are you doing taking it? Like, why did people stand Saddam Hussein? Why didn't they take him out? The Iraqi people. Like, why did you stand for that if you don't like it so much? And so sometimes you go to a place and it makes you scratch your head, yeah.
In some of those places, you can see like where piracy would start, because if you're hungry, you're sick, your family's hungry and sick, people are going to start and take stuff.
Or teen prostitution, like what I saw in South Africa, yeah.
But at this other time, too, like you brought up in Iraq, is people can be beat down for so many generations, I think.
Towards it becomes a way of life. That's communist Russia. That was Russia under Stalin. Yeah. Sure.